Good evening, everyone. If you'll take your seat, please. Thank you for joining us for the regular scheduled meeting of the City Council, Tuesday, March 25th. We'll establish a quorum. All council members are present. And I will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will ask if our fire chief will lead us, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You almost slipped there. You know that?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Reports. We have no closed session report to share because we were having goal setting. With that, we will move on to mayor and council member reports. And since I had to go last for the last 2 hours, I'm going to go first. Just kidding. No, I'm not kidding. You're right. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Meetings the last 2 weeks since we joined you. I had the opportunity to attend a wonderful event recognizing our firefighter recognition at the King David Lodge with Morro Bay Fire Department. I attended the Public Works Advisory meeting as their liaison. I attended the monthly mayor's meeting in Atascadero. I participated in ethics training that many of us council and advisory board members participated in yesterday as a requirement. I had a slow COG executive board meeting, a 3CE energy meeting, and I attended the Los Osos CSD meeting that they held talking about Sunnyside elementary acquisitions. So that was it for me for the last 2 weeks, and I will pass it to my right to Councilmember Landrum.
Okay. I also attended the PWAB meeting and the Sunnyside Town Hall about the acquisition of Sunnyside Elementary in Los Osos, and it was really well done. It was put on by their community services director, and they had a consultant that they've hired who gave estimates on the minimum and maximum costs for improvements. It was stated at that meeting that this is, and I think it's kind of similar to what we have in Morro Bay, that this is not just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but a multi-generational opportunity. I also attended the Downtown Design District meeting at the Planning Commission, and a community member invited me to join him at Cal Poly for the California Los Padres section of the American Chemical Society annual Pi Day lecture on the fate of pharmaceuticals in wastewater, the causes, consequences, and solutions. And I was really excited to see that the city's manager of the wastewater treatment plant, Damaris Hansen, was there, as well as our intern engineer. And it was just really interesting to find out that most of these pharmaceuticals are discharged into lakes and oceans, and we don't really know what happens after that. We do know that these pharmaceuticals get biomagnified up the food chain. And one of the things that I was surprised by is that animal excretion is a bigger issue, as they are often regularly given antibiotics, and this doesn't get treated. Also, for all of you that are listening, and just so you're aware, many pharmaceuticals get dumped down the drain or thrown into the trash, and this leaks into the groundwater. So also personal care products are a problem, so it's a good idea to dispose of these safely.
Thank you, Councilmember LaFay.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the Homeless Coalition last Thursday, and one of the things that came out of that was they are almost in the process of completing, and they put together a letter of support for a grant for the sent to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for their Home Key program for the Healing and Restoration Campus Project. Now, this campus project is to convert a sober living facility that's on, it's Duval Ranch, which is a 77-acre ranch on Los Osos Valley Road, just outside the city of San Luis. If anyone's ever followed that over the years, it's you know, Dan Duval has tried his utmost best to house individuals either right out of prison or that, and to try to sober them up, but he's had problems with money and so forth. So I believe the county is almost in the process of purchasing this whole property, and they're real close to getting this last grant to actually create a permanent housing complex out there. So that's kind of good news because I think they will be able to house almost 70 people once they get the money to finish up the structures. The other thing that came out of the Housing Coalition is the lack of funding that's going to happen starting next year in 2026. So we did a study session on what services, if any, should be eliminated or at least reduced because of the major drop in funding that's going to happen from the federal government and also the state government. So there are going to be some tougher times to get funding for homelessness and housing in the near future, just to be aware of. The other thing, I met with Capslo, which was at the function, and they are looking, and I'm still trying to figure out. They want to open up a warming center in Morro Bay. All they do is they need the facility. They will pay for it, they will man it, they will stock it. So if anyone knows of a facility, whether it be a church or some location, please get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me via email or whatever. Thank you. Oh, and then also, I attended the ethics training session last night with my other council people here. I also attended the Breakfast on the Bay put on by the Chamber of Commerce, and that was a good session. And I also attended the Recreation and Parks Advisory meeting. We had a presentation by the seniors 55 plus on trying to put in 4 more pickleball courts in at Del Mar Park. So that's to be continued, and I'll be working with that group to see if that's a possibility in the future. And also, they have put a plan together to develop a comprehensive activity guide at the rec department. It used to be called TIDES, if anyone is familiar with it, and that's going to start coming out, and I think it's going to be once a quarter or once every 6 months. That's it.
Thank you. We completed our goal-setting workshop earlier this afternoon from 3 until 5:30, so I wanted to make a few comments about that because I really didn't have an opportunity to make general comments earlier. You know, I wanted to share with the public, it's a challenging process for the City Council. Reason being is that it's all done in front of you. I've done brainstorming for years and years and years, and people get in a room for 3 or 4 or 5 hours and hash things out and then come back and do it again a few times and come out after several iterations with some really great game plans. This is a completely different process. It's done out in the open in front of you, and because of that has incumbent challenges as well. So I'm proud of what we accomplished earlier this afternoon, and I thank all my colleagues up here as well. I think we did a good job. And there was a comment about the time of day, and I think we did a lot of outreach, and our survey was responded to by over 500 people. I know we received lots of emails. I know every individual up here did a fair amount of outreach as well. But perhaps 2 years from now, we may want to look at a different time of day or maybe a couple of workshops, because as that speaker was making her comment, I got to thinking, you know, this is 120 minutes that the council is allocating for 2 years worth of planning and direction to staff in the city. Granted, it's not just those 2 hours, those 120 minutes. We've done work leading up to that, but that was just one of the thoughts that hit me. The real challenge, and I mentioned it earlier, and I think I'll mention it again because it's worth repeating, the real challenge, I think, one of the real challenges that Morro Bay faces in terms of our economic growth and development is maintaining the character and culture of the city, staying the special place that we are, the peaceful, unique character, quirky. One of the folks in the email said it was weird, and she was proud of that. But we know that a city is a living organism, and that any organism is either growing and evolving or decaying and dying. There's no stasis when it comes to an organism. You can't just stay still. So we are going to evolve. We're in the process of evolving, and we need to do that to the best of our ability as a community, as a family, as a group, to manage that growth in the way that we want collectively. So again, it's a privilege for me to be up here and do as best as I can to represent your voices in that process. I also want to thank the community for all the comments that were received. I could probably speak for all of us up here, but I can only say what I've done. I've read every single email, I've responded to every single email, and read every single one of the comments throughout the polling process. So it was very insightful for me as well. We talked a lot about fiscal viability and sustainability and resiliency, so many buzzwords for the city. I wanted to comment about where the city stands with regard to deficit spending. We received a letter from the Chamber of Commerce, and it was a good letter in terms of input with regard to our goal-setting process, but it had a misstatement of fact in there that I just wanted to call out because I'm very sensitive to narratives and very sensitive to making sure that we disseminate factual information when it goes out. The letter stated that the city is in a position of a budget deficit. We're not. In fact, by state law, we have to stay balanced, we have to pass a balanced budget, and we have to adhere to that balanced budget. So we're obligated to do that. What the letter was probably alluding to was that based upon certain projections, it looks like based on our capital improvement plan spending, we may need to dip into reserves under certain forecasts. But that's much, much different than running a budget deficit, which is not legal under state statute. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the meeting.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Eccles. I'm really glad that you mentioned all that and appreciate all the work that was done here today with my colleagues and staff, and our facilitator, Michael Cadron, really brought a great process to us. It was a good one. I also kind of wanted to chime in on what you just said, Councilmember Eccles. I think trying to find a way to progress in a comfortable way for the community is always a challenge, and if there is even such a way to do that. And I think that's what we're embarking on in the next 2 years is this, after the goal setting, embarking on that journey together. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for those comments. I went to many of the things that my colleagues did, but one of the committees that I am a part of is the IWMA, Waste Management Agency. And so I like to give my little things about trash and all things we're doing. SB 54 is a ban on plastics, and apparently that's been kicked off or put off for a little while here. Apparently it's not ready for prime time at Cal Recycle, but we'll get there. So it's not been eliminated, it's just going to take a little bit more time. So I was happy to hear that it wasn't going away. And then we have something called a Technical Assistant Grant Program, and I found this one really interesting. It's each one of them were $10,000 grants, and one of the ones that came to us was something called Mr. Turtle. And I don't know how many of you know this, but one of these contraptions that you can refill laundry detergent in, I didn't know that 2,800, what is it? 2,800,000 laundry jugs go into our ocean per year. And that means 30% of that packaging is going into our water supply and the ocean. And that is, I found that very disturbing. And so this company has designed this contraption that you can take your jug and refill your laundry detergent there. And we have one. One of the 4 are here at the Harbor Laundromat in Morro Bay. And so if you bring your container there, it's between 25 cents and I think $1 max at most of the places. I wasn't sure how much ours is, but you can refill your jug there and use it at home. So I was really excited. I always feel terrible when I'm throwing away those things. So I thought it would be fun to mention to you guys. And then another one of our grants went to Cayucas, and this was interesting because they are also struggling with their trash and recycling bins, and I know we are embarking on getting some new ones ourselves, so I wasn't sure if this was a grant that we had looked into, but interestingly enough, we're helping out Cayucas, so with their trash and recycling bins, so just wanted to mention that one as well.
Thank you, everyone. I also want to do a shout out to Great Garage Sale Weekend in Morro Bay. Hopefully everybody was able to get rid of a lot of things or find some new treasures. City Manager Kimball.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few brief updates. Mayor, I think you will recall while we're in DC, this is regarding Representative Carverhall's earmark project that we were asking for. And he had put in about $200,000 for Morro Bay Storm Drain Resilience Project as his earmark. And we just recently heard the update that this was not able to move forward, this request. We are going to try to do this for this upcoming year. And so we'll see how that's going to pan out. Also, the federal and the TPR funding, we are also continue to work on the TPR funding. And the exciting part on that one is, again, we were not very hopeful with the TPR funding. However, with the discovery of the relationship with Coastal Guard, which was actually contributed by the Harbor Vitality Director, Chris Monson, and that seems made some difference, and we're submitted that to our federal lobbyists, and hopefully with that and that connection, we're able to use that as a leverage and maybe can support Congressman Carverhall's request for us to get additional funding on the TPR. And also, Community Development Director told me with great pleasure that the RFP will have received some requests for proposals for waterfront master plan, and you speak slow. We also received a couple proposals for the sewer plant decommission. So that's conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Moving into subcommittee reports, anything, Mr. Singwald?
Yes, so Erlen Singwald, Community Development Director. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So last Tuesday, the Planning Commission hosted the public forum to conclude the Downtown Design District Subcommittee work effort. At that public forum, staff presented the Downtown Design District's recommendations, and council members Landrum and Edwards spoke, as well as other members of the ad hoc group for the Downtown Design District. The principal recommendation from the DDD subcommittee was the preparation of a form-based code that could allow for more housing and economic vitality in the downtown while preserving views of the bay and character defining buildings. The Planning Commission supported that recommendation. Of course, preparation of a form-based code is something that would require new resources, so implementation of that recommendation would need to be a function of the budget and future goal-setting process.
Thank you. Mr. Qualick, anything?
No updates for the Wharf Subcommittee.
Thank you. and there was no offshore wind. So, thank you. With that, we're going to move into a presentation from the fire chief.
Okay. Get this loaded up here. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. So on March 10th, we received an updated fire hazard severity zone maps from the State Fire Marshal's Office. The state is mandated by Government Code 51178 to identify levels of fire hazard based on consistent statewide criteria and the expected severity of fire hazards. Additionally, Government Code 51179 requires that the State Fire Marshal make recommendations to local agencies for adoption. We are mandated by the Government Code to make this information public within 30 days upon receipt. This presentation is one of the steps to accomplish that goal. Next slide. Thank you. So what are fire hazard severity zones? They are maps that identify areas throughout the state that are identified as moderate, high, or very high fire risk or fire hazard. The key elements of the fire hazard severity zone model are the probability of an area burning and expected fire behavior under extreme weather and fuel conditions. These zones measure hazard, not risk, and there is a difference between those. Hazards are things such as weather patterns, terrain, flame length, and potential fuel loads over a 50-year period. Risk is the potential damage a fire can do and does factor in things like fuel mitigation projects, building construction features, and other fire prevention activities. Next slide. So why the updates? The maps are being updated to better reflect the zones that are susceptible to fire, and it is utilizing some new science. Things including true local climate data, fire history, terrain, fuel modeling, and Imbricast. The last update for Morro Bay was in March of 2009. Again, there's a new science that's focusing on updating these maps to other terrain, fire modeling, and Imbricast based on the recent fire behavior. They've realized the effects that these have on the spread of fire. Per Senate Bill 63, local responsibility areas, such as the city of Morro Bay, are required to adopt the updated maps within 120 days of receipt. We cannot make any changes to reduce the severity of the designation. We only have the ability to make it more restrictive if it's desired by an agency. Next slide, please. So the images that you see here, the map on the left was the recommended fire hazard severity zone for Morro Bay in 2009. As you can see, there's just a small area of very high fire hazard severity over near the Black Hills. The map on the right is the proposed map. Pretty extensive change to the very high zone, and also a substantial change to moderate and high. The new map identifies 1,114 acres as moderate, 266 acres as high, and 754 acres as very high. The very high increases by approximately 698 acres. The fire marshal and I are reviewing the maps and the related codes, and will be bringing back a recommendation to the council at a future date within the 120-day window to adopt these with some additional proposed changes. Next slide, please. How to view the map. So we have shared the map link on the city's website, along with some other documentation, including a question and answer sheet from the California Insurance Commission, and a lot of other related information. Comments can be directed to me through a separate email, fhszcomments@morrobayca.gov. And again, all this information will be under Hot Topics on the city's website. And I do have a PDF printout of the map located on the back table, as well as a handout from the California Department of Insurance, if anybody in the audience is interested in looking at those. The maps can also be found just by Googling Fire Hazard Severity Zone maps for California. You can look up recommendations in what's known as the LRA viewer. And then Morro Bay is part of phase 3 on that. They've released the maps as 4 different phases, depending on which portion of the state you're in. And with that, that concludes the presentation. If there's any specific questions, I will be bringing it back to council for more information at a future time as well.
Thank you. Just that we already have a weed abatement ordinance. Does that also include requiring a defensible space?
It does. So it will add requirements for the 100-foot defensible space in certain areas of the city that didn't have that before. It will also require, we already adopt California Building Code Chapter 7A, which is the wildland-urban interface requirements for any areas that border very high or are in very high. So there's a larger portion of the city that's going to be required now because it's going to encompass high and very high, and that has expanded into the city. So there's going to be a lot more information coming on which areas this impacts. I'll be working with community development as well because we're going to have to update the requirements for the permitting and things like that.
Thank you. And I know we're required to do this. It's not optional. Thank you for the presentation. Will this, when you bring this back, is this going to include in the conversation our suppression capabilities and all those things with our water tanks and flows and things?
Yes, we plan on bringing kind of a comprehensive look at kind of our wildfire preparations, codes related to that, if we need to make any updates or changes, and then if there's any other recommendations as well.
And will it allow any, is there, I mean, most of this is, oh, let me rephrase that. A large part of this is state parks property. How do we have no jurisdiction over that?
No, the state parks property will be mapped as very high, and it's what they call a mutual threat zone. So although it's within city limits, state does have responsibility to protect that as well. So we work in conjunction with CAL FIRE for the fire suppression for the state park. But this does expand that very high limit into some of the residential housing within the city limits, and that we will have direct oversight on for building codes, hazard mitigation, and those types of things.
But well, I guess what I was trying to ask is there any way the rules that we put in place won't affect the requirements for them? We can't, I mean, they're creating the fire loading situation in part for us.
We're going to work with them with the new mapping. It'll just expand that conversation. We do have a plan, and State Parks has a 4-year fuels management plan that we support. We issue the burn permits for them to conduct their hazard fuel mitigation program. So we'll just expand that conversation, and we'll work closely with them to try to improve the situation.
Thank you. Mr. LaFay?
Chief, could you map out, I probably could look at it later, but the street going north and south where the red zone is and the yellow and the orange, what street is that?
You know,
Do you know?
give me a moment to pull it up, and then I'll get you an answer. I'll have to pull it up on an
I'm
expanded
sorry,
map.
just curious.
Thank you. Was hoping for better news. With that, we'll move into public comment. I have 3 speaker slips to start with. Carrie, you're up first, followed by Ray Rorden and Paul. Bosclair. I'm going to say it wrong, Paul, sorry. Bosclair.
Hi, it's me. So I had, well, again, maybe fun's not the right word, but I had a really interesting time yesterday going to that ethics training. However, I did find it very interesting. At some point, somebody made the comment that, you know, everybody sitting in that room, most of you were there, you know, had, what was it? We were talking about the conflict of interest with the Vista property, and lo and behold, I was the only one in the room that didn't have a conflict of interest there because I own a car and some books and some other junk, and that's not enough for a conflict of interest. However, I did have a far more interesting time talking to our interim city attorney there about specifically the common law bias prohibition. Namely, you know, I was concerned about inherent biases in not necessarily wanting to do what's best for you, but wanting to do what's best for everybody, and there being certain biases in that. And he explained to me, so long as you guys genuinely believe that, what you are doing is going to genuinely benefit the population of this town as a whole, then that's perfectly acceptable. However, it was doubly interesting coincidence. This weekend, I just found, I think it was my brother's, this book, The Way of Business, an inquiry into meaning and superiority, sitting in my house. I spent the weekend reading it. Wanting what's best for everybody doesn't necessarily mean you know what's best for everybody. Specifically, I think this book, you guys might be able to read this and understand it. I'm not going to recommend it to everybody. However, it makes a very interesting case, not the case that it means to make, but the one that it accidentally makes, being that, let's see, for instance, one of the people that, made our country what it is today was James J. Hill, builder of the Great Northern Railway, who came to be called the Empire Builder. I, for one, am not a big fan of empires. So, right there, a bit of a glaring problem. As well, page 1 of this book on, how economics of America works, page 1 makes the case that modern Palestine is culturally at the same level of development as the ancient Israelites of the Bible, and that, in fact, modern-day Israel is nearly on par with the cultural development of us.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, esteemed council members, and Morro Bay City staff. My name is Ray Reardon. I'm the president of the Morro Bay Chamber Foundation. The foundation is a separate arm of the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce. The primary difference between the chamber and our foundation is the main Chamber of Commerce focus that promotes the interests of the 300-plus members by providing advocacy, resources, marketing support, and retail-based events to help our members build and manage their businesses. On the other hand, the foundation's primary focus is more broad-based community focus. This means instead of concentrating only on active businesses, our emphasis is an investment in the future accomplished through fundraising and providing community-based events and educational seminars held primarily to fund scholarships for Morro Bay High School seniors. Including the 2025 recipients, we will have awarded over $20,000 in scholarships, and because of our community support, we will double the prize recipients this year versus last year. As with all foundation types organizations, we are totally dependent on our community donations. As a 501c3 organization, 100% of every donation passes straight through to the recipients of our scholarships or services. The foundation has no paid employees and is a 100% volunteer board of directors. One of the primary sources of funding for these scholarships is the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce Community Recognition and Awards Gala coming up on May 17th. This event has 3 distinct ways to support the foundation. During the dinner, we will be auctioning off more than a dozen gourmet cakes, including world-famous creations from the Donna Inn and La Parisienne. We will also have both live and silent auctions, with some items being directly foundation-related, along with some fun and lucrative audience participation games. Each of these donation opportunities, again, being 100% tax deductible. So in closing, I'm asking you all to invest in the future leaders of Morro Bay by becoming a partner with the Morro Bay Chamber Foundation. If you have any questions, see me after the meeting or stop by the chamber office. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Respected council and devoted staff, thank you for giving me a minute tonight. My name is Paul Boisclair. My wife Kelly and I have been in Morro Bay 17, 18 years now, and we run a modest business up at Morro and Harbor. Anyway, I wish to thank you all, but I'd really like to thank you all, and here's why. Through the course of our marriage, we've found, and we don't have empirical data on this, but 5% of the people do 95% of the volunteering and donate 95% of the proceeds that go to funds. Regrettably, as we've been inundated with places to give money to, we've held back because we're not sure where that money goes. We're not sure how much of it goes to the intended cause. We're not sure how much of it goes to management or other. But I'm happy to report we've found the Morro Bay Chamber Foundation, so much so that we've become a part of it now. It checks all the boxes for us. It's a 501c3. 100%, as Ray mentioned, is passed through to our students here in Morro Bay. And 3, the money stays in Morro Bay. October 10th, we're going to have our second golf function, and we hope everybody can participate with their time or their treasure and allow us to build a fund so we can, again, give a stout amount of money to our kids here in Morro Bay. Thank you for this time, and I'll be with Ray at the back if anybody would like to chat. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Barry Brannon, Morro Bay. You guys have spent a lot of time on goal setting, and that's a real challenge. We all do it. But I'd like to talk about long-term goal setting. Morro Bay's got some long-term opportunities, like all real estate. And one of the long-term opportunities that we have is the real estate that the city owns. I went through the list here about a month ago with pictures of all the properties we have. We have out in Chorro Valley, we have probably 5 acres out there. It's kind of interesting land. Right next door, there's a couple ranches for sale. We have the teen center down next to the high school. Wonderful piece of opportunity, nice piece of real estate. We have other opportunities of properties in our city that maybe could be better utilized. In long term, we have some other needs of real estate. The city hall, I don't know if you've been around in some of the other cities, but our city hall ain't much. And it looks to me like it's got a long-term challenges to be able to meet what we're going to need as a city. Our police station is scary. If you haven't been in there, you need to. It's how they work in those conditions. I think they should be probably a suit of abuse that we're asking them people to work in those environments. So we need some long-term goal setting on real estate. And part of that long-term setting on goals on real estate is obviously the schoolhouse, the opportunity to buy that. But the difficulty is we're asking you to make policy decisions on how to do all these things. But I used to work for a corporation, and there was a thing called completed staff work. And you had a problem. First, you identified the problem. And then you looked at all of the opportunities to solve that problem. And you went right down all these challenges and the opportunities, and you came up with solutions, and you brought that recommended solution to the boss and got approval. And we're asking you to make decisions on the school district. You got all this extra property, maybe a higher real estate. But I believe that the city would benefit if you could have a citizens committee, maybe 5 people, sit down and look at the properties we have. And I envision this, if we could magically take all of our properties that are short-term, long-term, are excess to the city, that are not being used, not being optimized, and if those properties went poof, and all of a sudden we exchanged it for the schoolhouse with the playground, we moved the police station into the schoolhouse property, not a nice yard, we get the parks and recreation, we take the old city hall, the current city hall, and make some nice housing for our citizens, some good opportunity housing, next to the bus stops, next to the library, next to the post office. But this takes some planning. And so I'm suggesting that you maybe put on the next city council agenda a chance to talk about a long-term view of this and establishing a small committee, 5 people, maybe some citizens, maybe some, and you have them come up with some recommendations for long-term policy. Thank you.
City Council staff, Michelle Lester Cattery, North Morro Bay. I'm here to bring up the property at the 400 block of Trinidad Street again. What is the current status? And are we to the point where the city is going to take some steps to manage the burnt property? It is a nuisance. The fencing is up, but the fencing's falling down. We have more feral cats in that building than you can shake a stick at. During the large wind event that we just had, there's particles flying everywhere. They're landing on cars, they're landing on the patios. It's a problem. There's still hazmat chemicals in that garage. The question is, with all the rains, are they leaching? There's big concerns. There's still 3 trash cans on the property in the driveway. There are people dumping in there constantly. We just had the yard sale. People are dumping their leftover stuff in there. There's no need for it. If neighbors have too much trash, they're putting them in the trash cans. People are leaving things next to the trash cans. It's a problem again. The other thing is that the rats, the mice, it's not okay. I shouldn't have to have rat traps on my back fence. Neither should the neighbors up the way on Tahiti and on Trinidad Street. It's just not okay. Our property values are going down. This needs to be addressed. Whether the city takes the property, eminent domain, I don't know how. I mean, legally, it needs to be handled. Parts of the balcony, quote unquote, the Juliet balcony, are falling down. It has to be handled. We're going on 3 years now. This is just not okay. Whether it's just a matter of tearing it down, leaving the property sitting there until the family gets their act together, I don't know what the solution is, but there has to be a solution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret Carmen. And what I was going to talk about, Mr. Barry just got up and proved it, because I was going to start out saying thank you so much for the goal-setting session, and especially for putting El Morro Elementary School as one of your priorities. Very, very important. And I heard staff have some concern that, the money and the staff time. So I was going to get up here and say thank you, Councilwoman Landrum, to talk about thinking out of the box, and then Barry gets up here and thinks out of the box. So I just want to say how powerful we are here in Morro Bay. And when our citizens get together, we just have no idea how all this is going to work out really, really beautifully. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good evening again. Dina Lundquist with the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much, Councilmember Eccles, for noting the error in our communication. I think you are correct. We were looking at the city could experience a future budget deficit. So I appreciate your comment. On that note, I appreciate also the goal setting being concise and just setting it to 3 specific goals. And I would expect the objectives to also be concise, measurable, time-sensitive, and results-driven. Regarding economic vitality, revenue enhancement that have been combined, I agree with Barry in regards to looking at city-owned properties. That is something that will take time to look at, and it is prime redevelopment opportunities that are currently underutilized. And they can prioritize the monetization. These assets can provide a steady revenue stream that supports various city initiatives and helps balance our budget deficit, future budget deficit. Workforce housing. I talked a lot about how we can keep our businesses sustainable, growing, make sure that their first year which is very vital. So many small businesses do not make it past the first year. But with that, the employees that work in these businesses, which leading Morro Bay is the hotel industry and the restaurant industry, and the average wage for those employees, and if you take out the gas money that they have to pay in order to get to Morro Bay because they cannot live here, is not going to give us the quality workforce that we want and that we take such pride in every day as a community and for our tourism. So I think it's very important as we look at Morro Bay Elementary and we look at workforce or income-based housing, that we consider housing for that Morro Elementary site. Let's not forget about workforce housing, that we need to provide and experience a community that is diverse in color, in gender, in age. It makes for a much more thriving community and a much more exciting place to live. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mayor, if I may provide a response to Councilmember LaFay's question about the map.
Can you hang on 1 second so I can just finish with AGP?
Hi, Mayor Wixom. We have one person in the queue with their hand raised.
Thank you.
Linda Winters. I will allow her to speak. Okay, Linda, you may begin.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Greetings, Mayor, Council, staff, and the Chiefs. I am Linda Winters, 31-year resident here in Morro Bay. I want you all to know how much I miss you, but I believe you all know why I'm not there in person. I'm here tonight to report about the Monday night community dinners, which occur every single Monday night right there at the Vets Hall. We've been averaging somewhere between 75 and 85 participants. And what those participants receive is a wonderful hearty meal from 8 different organizations that prepare those meals. They have the availability to go through the food banks where 400 to 500 pounds of food are provided for people to be able to collect. And then they get that chance to receive clothing, toiletry articles, household articles from the donation station. All of those things are free of charge to anyone who comes through the Vets Hall doors. One of the things that I'd like to speak about tonight is prior to the Monday night dinners on the first and third Mondays at the Morro Bay Library, there is a shower trailer that's set up for anybody who would like to come in and get a hot shower, provided by 805 Street Outreach. And they can come in, and this is also free of charge, and there's donations available for anybody who would like to pick them up. But in the last several times, they have not been able to operate the showers because of a lack of liability insurance. The county requires a $2 million liability policy for those showers. And the premium for that policy is approximately $8,000. Now, for a nonprofit to have that kind of fund necessary cash flow going out is nigh unto impossible. So what's been happening is we have formed a GoFundMe link so that anybody who would like to contribute to keeping these showers a very vital operation going on, there is a link that you can go to. It's GoFundMe at 805 Outreach. And I believe the link is available. And I would hope that everybody who has a few extra bucks would contribute to it. I know I did, and I'd like to see this go on for as long as we possibly can. It is a worthwhile project for all of the community. If you have a good feeling person, then you're going to have a good feeling member of the community. I thank you all for your time, and I hope that the city will provide the GoFundMe link onto the city web. Thank you.
AGP, any other raised hands?
Hi, Mayor. There's no more raised hands in the queue.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? With that, I will close public comment and bring it back to council. Chief McCrane?
Thank you, Mayor. To answer Councilmember LaFay's question, roughly in South Morro Bay specifically, the very high fire hazard severity zone boundary is Arbutus. The high area boundary is Fresno Street, and the moderate comes out to roughly Bernardo Street. It does zigzag a little bit, but those are generalizations.
Thank you. And then who am I going to direct the question to for an answer on the house on Trinidad Street?
So, Erlen Singwall, Community Development Director. So, the property has been secured with a fence. The property is in probate, at least it was several months ago when I spoke with the administrator of the probate. She explained that it has been a prolonged probate process. What I can do is have our inspector go out there and inspect the condition of the fence and see if there are any additional nuisances on the property that need to be addressed. And if so, we'll reach out to the probate administrator and work with her to remedy that.
Thank you. Would that include rodent and everything else with that, or just the fencing?
So any health and safety concerns will be flagged. I will let our inspector know to look for rodent-related concerns.
And no idea when this is going to be resolved?
Well, so I will also give the administrator of the probate a call and get an update so I can report back to council when this comes up again.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We will move on to the consent agenda. I would just like to announce to the general public that this evening we have pulled item 9A from the agenda. It was the ordinance repealing and replacing the Title 7 animal regulations, and we will be re-agendizing it as a public hearing item. With that, public comment is open on items on the consent agenda.
Betty Winholtz. I was going to refer to item 7C and just ask the question about how those grants are, if the grant givers understand the situation of Morro Bay's situation in terms of being able to provide the kinds of water that they want, the quantity.
Anyone else for public comment on the consent agenda? AGP, are there any raised hands in the queue?
Hi, Mayor Wixom. There are no raised hands in the queue.
Thank you. With that, I will close the consent agenda public comment period, bring it back to council. Mr. Kwolek, are you able to provide any comment on that?
Thank you, Mayor. I can speak broadly that, again, the WRF project generally is funded through and financed through grants and loans. And the question was about grants. So our grants don't specify number of acre feet per year that the recycled water component of the project would need to produce. They more refer to the injection wells in the plural, which to us means 2. It is our SRF loan that specifies how much injection of recycled water we need to have at 412.5 acre feet. Currently is understood by the Water Quality Control Board and is indicated in a letter to the city about a year ago.
Thank you, Mr. Kwolek. Does anyone want to pull any of the items on the consent agenda? To my right, to my left? I will move approval of the consent agenda and ask for a second.
I'll second that.
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. With that, we will move on to 9B, and I will turn it over to our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again. I'm Marilyn Singwald, Community Development Director. I'm strangely excited to give a presentation on the history of a coastal commission jurisdiction in the city of Morro Bay. I'll do my best to keep it brief, however. The clicker doesn't appear to be, oh, here we go. So as the council is aware, the vast majority of the city limits is within the coastal zone, all of the city parcels except for 8. When the Coastal Act was enacted, it required a coastal development permit for any development in the coastal zone and gave the California Coastal Commission the sole authority to permit development anywhere in the coastal zone. The Coastal Act also had a provision that allows for local coastal cities and counties to adopt a local coastal program or a mini version of the Coastal Act for that jurisdiction. When the city adopted its local coastal program in the early 80s and when it was certified by the California Coastal Commission, the city was able to receive the jurisdiction or permit authority to permit development within the coastal zone. However, there are certain areas within the coastal zone where the Coastal Commission thought it was just too important to give that jurisdiction to the local agencies, so they kept that jurisdiction, and those areas are called Coastal Original Jurisdiction, or COJ areas is how I'm going to refer to them. The Coastal Original Jurisdiction areas are specifically defined in the Coastal Act to include tidelands, submerged lands, and lands subject to the public trust. So to this day, any development that we see within a COJ or original jurisdiction area must obtain a CDP directly from the Coastal Commission. In other words, the city has no authority to issue a CDP within a COJ area. And the area where we most commonly see development projects within coastal original jurisdiction is on the west side of the Embarcadero. This can be a little confusing at times because often these projects on the west side of the Embarcadero, for example, require a land use permit from the city, usually a conditional use permit, in addition to a coastal development permit directly from the Coastal Commission. So on recent projects like the Bayside Landing project, the city processes and takes action on the conditional use permit. Once the applicant receives that conditional use permit, they can go to the Coastal Commission and they could request and obtain their coastal development permit from the Coastal Commission. And that's just in COJ areas. Outside of original jurisdiction areas, of course, the city, per our local coastal program, can permit development. So in addition to the coastal original jurisdiction areas, there are appealable areas. These are areas in the city that are specifically anywhere between the sea and the first public road paralleling the sea, within 100 feet of an environmentally sensitive habitat area, or within 300 feet of a coastal beach or bluff. These are appealable areas, meaning the city is able to issue a coastal development permit, but that approval can be appealed to the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission can have the final say on that permit. And this is all important background and context for the jurisdiction transfer, which is the purpose of this item that I'll get to in just a second. So this is what we call our 1991 post-certification map. So when the local coastal program was certified by Coastal Commission, this map was approved. This is the map that we use to reference the areas in the city that are within that coastal original jurisdiction, which again is important because that means developers have to go directly to the Coastal Commission for their permit. This map also identifies those appealable areas, and this is the map that really up until present times, city staff and Coastal Commission staff have always referred to determine the permit process and requirements for a project, and whether it's in an appealable area or an original jurisdiction area. I know it's a little difficult. The clicker is lagging today. No wonder why the clicker wasn't working well. Okay, yeah, can you go back real quick? So just, this is, I know, difficult to see from this distance, but the green line on the map, that represents the coastal original jurisdiction line on our post-certification map. So any land, any permit west of that green line is an original jurisdiction area, or has been an original jurisdiction area, and applicants would have to go to the Coastal Commission for their permit. Next slide. So the title and survey map, this is the plot twist in the story this evening. So a few months ago, Coastal Commission staff notified my department that the Coastal Commission found a new title survey for Morro Bay. Of course, it's not new. It's an old historic document, but it was newly discovered and actually changes our understanding of the extent of the historic tidelands along Morro Bay. Very interesting. And because those original jurisdiction areas are largely defined by historic tidelands, this new survey changes the boundaries of those original jurisdiction areas. And it changes the boundaries mostly in a way that expands the original jurisdiction areas. And as I'm going to talk about in a minute here, there is a process for Coastal Commission to actually transfer that jurisdiction back to the city. Next slide. So effect on permit jurisdiction. So essentially the red crosshatch here, this is what the coastal original jurisdiction would look like based on this newly discovered tidelands survey if there is no transfer of jurisdiction back to the city. In other words, this is based on the best available information today, this new tidelands survey, the red crosshatched area is the area of the historic tidelands within the city. And this, per the Coastal Act, would actually automatically by default become the coastal original jurisdiction areas if there is no jurisdiction transfer back to the city. And here's just a comparison. So again, the green line is from the post-certification maps. This is the line that we have referenced up until now to determine if a project's in original jurisdiction or within city appeals jurisdiction. And then you can see that compared to the red crosshatch of the tidelands survey original jurisdiction area. Next slide. So again, I apologize. It is difficult to read this map from this distance, but there are two yellow crosshatched areas. The one to the north covers a portion of the power plant property, the boat storage yard, and the triangle parking lot. And the yellow crosshatched area to the south covers the east side of the Embarcadero from Dunes to South Street. So these are areas where the new tidelands survey showed an expansion of the historic tidelands and therefore an expansion of the original jurisdiction area, and where Coastal Commission staff is recommending that we initiate a transfer of that jurisdiction back to the city. If the council doesn't initiate this, and if it's not approved by the Coastal Commission, then the city will lose land use control. We'll lose local control of these areas. They'll become COJ areas, and the city will not have the ability to permit development in these areas. And the next slides will go into more detail on the two areas. So area one, calling it the triangle lot. So this covers a portion of the power plant property. I don't have a slide showing this, but currently there is a small sliver of the power plant property that is within the original jurisdiction area, and the new tideland survey shows that boundary going further inland to encompass almost half of the power plant building. So this would mean that the power plant property would be split jurisdiction between coastal original jurisdiction and the city appeals jurisdiction, which means if there's any future application to develop the power plant property, an applicant would have to get a permit from the city for our appeals jurisdiction and a permit from the Coastal Commission for the COJ portion of the property. That's the way the process works. Now, without getting too much into the details, there is something called consolidated processing, which is built into the Coastal Act and would create a situation where possibly the Coastal Commission could just take over the permit since they are the superior permitting agency, and they would process one permit for the project that would cover the city CDP and Coastal Commission CDP. If that were to happen, city staff would still want to engage very closely in that process, but there would be no permit for us to attach our time to, so there'd be challenges with cost recovery, and of course we'd be giving up our land use control to Coastal Commission. So by initiating this jurisdiction transfer, and if it's approved by the Coastal Commission, then the entire power plant property would be in city CDP appeals jurisdiction, and we would have the local control. We'd be able to require a CDP and get full cost recovery for our time to engage in that process. Also, this area again encompasses the boat storage yard and the triangle parking lot. Again, similar situation, except if the jurisdiction transfer doesn't happen, those areas would be entirely within coastal original jurisdiction, and so automatically any permitting would be with the Coastal Commission and not at the city level. Next slide. So the other area of the recommended jurisdiction transfer is on the east side of the Embarcadero between Dune Street and South Street. This is a little bit of a different situation because this jurisdiction transfer would really just continue the status quo. Let me explain what I mean by that. So the current, that green line from the post-certification map, that already identifies the area on the west side of the Embarcadero as the original jurisdiction area, and the area on the east side of the Embarcadero here being city appeal jurisdiction area. It just so happens that this new Tideland survey that was discovered does expand the original jurisdiction area to also include the east side of the Embarcadero. So technically this is the case today because the way the Coastal Act is structured, it just references original jurisdiction area, includes areas of historic filled tidelands, and this tideland survey shows that east side of the Embarcadero is historic filled tideland areas, and so if this transfer doesn't go forward, that becomes the case. Actually, that is the case now until this transfer is approved by Coastal Commission. Next slide. So this is the final result of the recognizing the new Tideland survey and if the jurisdiction transfers go forward. So the red crosshatch would be the new original jurisdiction area. This would be the same original jurisdiction area that would result from the new Tidelands survey minus those two jurisdiction transfer areas that would come back to the city. Next slide. And here's the final comparison. Again, the green line is anything west of it is the COJ area based on the post-certification maps that we've been using up until now. And then the red crosshatch would be the new original jurisdiction area based on the old Tideland survey and a jurisdiction transfer for those two areas that I pointed out. I will note while it's up, and this is getting also into a nuance, but I think it's really important to point out. So I don't have it highlighted on this slide, but I think we all know where the pedestrian path is leading up from Embarcadero to Little Morrow Creek. So you can see that area on this map is outside of the original jurisdiction area. It's outside of that red crosshatch. That is because a new Tidelands survey showed that to be not historic Tidelands. Up until now, the post-certification maps and the best information showed that that was historic Tidelands. So that's an area that's actually shifting to automatically give the city jurisdiction. And there's no jurisdiction transfer to happen there because the city just doesn't have, or I'm sorry, the city has jurisdiction because that never was Tidelands area according to this latest survey. So in summary, again, the plot twist of the years of our understanding of jurisdictional boundaries really comes down to this new Tideland survey that was discovered. This request was initiated by Coastal Commission staff, which tells me it's likely to be supported by Coastal Commission if we get direction to request the transfer from council this evening. From staff perspective, it really comes down to local control and the ability for full cost recovery to engage in permitting of development projects. So that generally is a win for local jurisdiction. And then for the southern area, so the eastern side of the Embarcadero between Dunes and South Street, approving this jurisdiction transfer really is just a continuation of the status quo of the last 40 years or so. And I think the final slide is just a recommendation to authorize Community Development Director to send a letter requesting the Coastal Commission transfer the permit jurisdiction for the identified areas per section 30613 of the Coastal Act. I didn't go into much detail about that section of the Coastal Act, but it does have criteria that's described in detail in the staff report. So for any area to be for jurisdiction to be transferred, it has to be, if it was a tidelands area, it has to now be filled, it has to be urbanized, and it can't conflict with the public trust. So that concludes staff recommendation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singwald. Questions to my right?
I'm just curious, where did they find these relics? Like, how did they not know that these existed?
That's why it's a good plot twist, because we've asked the question, and it seems like a bit of a mystery. I think we heard that one of their planners in their mapping section was just going through old information, and they found it, so.
And then, so I just am curious about also the sand spit. That's not, you can't develop that at all.
So that is original jurisdiction, or most of it is, yeah. There's a whole a list of constraints that would prevent the sand spit from ever being developed, and I believe the city owns the majority of the sand spit.
Okay, thank you.
To my left?
No questions here, but thank you for that thorough report. I appreciate it.
I always love a good plot twist. I can't believe that this just came up now. It's quite shocking to me, I'll be honest, that this didn't come to us sooner. I'm so happy that you ended up getting this information to us, so thank you, Mr. Singwald.
Public comment is open on this item. Come on up. Thank you.
Yes, I was wondering if this was categorically exempt under CEQA, any action that we take.
I'm sorry, the questions can be directed towards us? Can you repeat your question?
Is this action that's proposed, is it categorically exempt under CEQA?
So, if you'd like me to answer the question, Mayor. So, the first question is if this is a project under CEQA. If it is a project under CEQA, it would it would qualify as a categorical exemption.
Thank you, Mr. Singwald.
Are these maps available online somewhere? Is there a link?
Yeah. So the agenda packet does include a copy of all of these maps. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Singwald. Anyone else for public comment on this item?
Betty Winholtz. This is a question about boundary. So when you say it comes down through the Triangle parking lot, and I'm curious about right in front of the bluff, right below us here, where the staircase used to be, because there's a proposal for a new hotel there. Is that part of this coming to us, and it's no longer under coastal? And I appreciate your response that you gave to me about my questions, and the piece where you talked about that some of these properties no longer can be appealed to the CCC, and a lot of our town can't. But so are there pieces here that will no longer be appealed?
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? AGP, are there any raised hands in the queue?
Hi, Mayor Wixom. There are no raised hands on the queue.
Thank you. With that, I will close public comment and bring it back to council. Mr. Singwald, can you address that, please?
Yes, so the hotel development, the address is 1180 Front Street. It is just right here below the bluff. It's actually on the bluff face, and the area of original jurisdiction that Coastal Commission staff is asking us to take on, that they want to transfer to us, that goes to the toe of the bluff. So the short or concise response is the property currently is within the city appeals jurisdiction, not within the original jurisdiction, and this action wouldn't change that. The other part of the question asking about, would this change, remove anything from outside of the appeals jurisdiction? That's a good question, and I should clarify that the jurisdiction transfer areas those are going from, they would go from original jurisdiction to city appeals jurisdiction. So nothing would be going outside of appeals jurisdiction. So any area that's appealable today would still be appealable after this jurisdiction transfer.
Thank you, Mr. Singwald. Comments or any other questions to my right? To my left? Looking for a motion?
I guess I'll do it. I move that we authorize the Community Development Director to send the attached letter requesting the Coastal Commission transfer permitting jurisdiction to the city for specified areas in accordance with the Selection 30613 of the Coastal Act.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you again for the report. Interesting twist. With that, we're at the end. Any future agenda items to my left? Any future agenda items to my right? No?
I have one. I would like support for, it kind of falls in line with what we've been, well, it really does with the goals, and I'm hoping that we can get a kind of kickstart on this with the work that the subcommittee, CFAC subcommittee, Brian Dorfman and Jean Johnson have been doing. I am thinking that it would be a good idea to have, and to enhance that and have like a marketing subcommittee that they lead to come up with ideas for revenue enhancement opportunities.
Can I make a comment first?
Yeah.
Just because I'm
As long as
liaison to
pertaining
CFAC?
to that, yes.
Yeah. So I do know that that committee is not done with their kind of exploration until June, I think, council members. So I don't know if you want to, timeline-wise, how that would work, but I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think I would like to see it come through, since it's a subcommittee through CFAC, to come through CFAC to us, if we could. Would you be amenable to that? We have a lot on our plate right now.
Right. Well, that was the other thing. It was to not have. I mean, it was mainly. I'm hoping to get them to connect with, Visit Morro Bay and
I would hope they
the
would meet us
chamber
to do
and
that, yeah.
well, yeah, and have our support. Well, they do through their subcommittee already, but I feel like it's kind of growing wings, and it just I want to see it really. It's such an important thing.
I appreciate in concept, but I, at this point, couldn't support adding it to our agenda. I'd like to see it come through. See, Billy, Councilmember LaFay, you're saying no?
No, no, I don't, I think they need to go through their process first.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No? We're adjourned. Thank you.